Hey, how you doing? So, when I was in the Navy, I was on a aircraft carrier for about 3.5 years, whatever, 3 years and 3 months, technically, I guess. But when we were in port at the home base there at Norfolk, what we would do is stock up on everything we could to get ready for the cruise. So we would try to stock up on the food and everything else. So some cold stuff we could take with us. Like we would stock up on cans of any kind of soda that we could get our hands on there. We'd have cases of Coke and ginger ale and stuff like that. Now, to store them, when we were in port, we paid a crane operator. There was always crane operators who were constantly moving stuff onto the ship and off the ship. So we got to know this one crane operator, and we paid him like a large can of coffee, I think it was, to move this one skid up to the flight deck. Because if the operator from the crane moved the stuff to the flight deck, it didn't have to get past what you would call security at the top of the gangplank. Because whenever you were coming on and off the ship, there were these petty officers who were in charge of checking baggage coming onto the ship. So we paid this crane operator to move this skid up onto the flight deck. And one time we bought a refrigerator. So we had this crane operator move the skid with the refrigerator onto the flight deck. And then we wheeled the refrigerator up to Radar 1, which was our main hangout. And what we did was took all the handles and stuff off the refrigerator so it didn't look so conspicuous. And we spray painted it gray. Everything on the ship is gray. That's why there's that saying, haze gray and underway, because everything is painted navy gray. So all the cabinets for the radar equipment and everything else were painted gray. So we spray painted the refrigerator gray, and then we mounted a couple gauges and indicators and stuff on the door of the refrigerator at random places, and we put some labels that said like power output and stuff like that underneath the gauges, so it mimicked the equipment. So whenever there was an inspection, the people doing the inspecting would look around at the cabinets for the equipment and go, oh yeah, okay, those all look nice and clean, everything's fine. And they wouldn't pay any attention to that being a refrigerator. So then we would load all of our sodas and stuff into that refrigerator that we had there. Because when you're going up across the gangplank, you're carrying stuff in your sea bag and stuff when you got your supply runs from the grocery stores. So then we would just take them up there, load them in the refrigerator, fine. We carried other stuff too, like I had a hot plate that was like maybe a foot square, one of those little electric plug-in hot plates. So we always took along powdered pancake mix and stuff like that, because you didn't really want to be eating down at the mess hall all the time. The food just wasn't really that great, so sometimes we would just go up to one of the radar spaces, break out that hot plate, and make some pancakes and stuff. Because the food was like powdered eggs, and then when we were out for a while, you couldn't get like fresh milk and stuff. Sometimes we had goat's milk, that like whenever we were tooling past other countries, we would get supplies from there, and a lot of times it was like goat milk and stuff like that. So we would carry powdered milk and everything else along with us too. And once in a while, some of the guys in radar would get care packages. Care packages are packages that got mailed, like boxes of stuff that got sent through the mail. And because we had an FPO, which is like a federal post office, so it would get to the ship to whatever division you were in and whoever you were. So sometimes the guys would get these care packages, including me. That would be like their family would send them, food, basically. Food was one of the best things to get in a care package, because that's what you were after, was food, because there's a limited supply of it. So I remember we would get like salami and meats and stuff that were smoked, and including Spam. Spam was some good stuff, because now you can make some Spam with your pancakes and everything else. Just throw it on the hot plate, cook it up, good to go. Now normally we were working 12 on, 12 off at sea all the time. So we would work 12 hours, and then you would find stuff that you could keep yourself busy with for part of the other 12 hours. I know they had college classes also on the carrier. So there would be like retired college professors, civilians, and they would get paid to come onto the ship, ride along with us out at sea, and teach these college classes. It was a pretty good deal, because it was credited classes from different schools, like City College of Chicago and some stuff like that, were some of them I remember. Because you've got time after your work schedule, you've got time, you might as well take a college class or something. So there would be the regular college assignments and stuff. So say on like Tuesday and Thursday, we met with the college instructor, and he would give regular class for like an hour, and then some of the other days, like the off days, you could study your stuff, and you could get college credits while you were at sea. That was a good deal too. But most of the nights we would just play poker, because after your 12-hour shift, there was always a poker game going on. So me and my buddies from Radar would just go down, join one of the poker games, and play cards for a couple of hours. And then you'd hit the rack and get up the next day, pretty much do the same thing. So part of the time, you weren't at sea. You were in port. in which in our case it was Norfolk. So then it wasn't 12 on, 12 off, 7 days a week. Then it was closer to a regular job. So you could live off base. A lot of the guys had a wife and kids and stuff. I was single at the time, but you have to figure, with all the people that are on that ship, a lot of them are married guys who are midlife and stuff, and they've got kids. So they would have a house in Norfolk. Then, when they were in port, they could just go live at their house. They'd get up in the morning, drive back there, work the regular job, 8 hours or whatever, and then drive back home. Not a bad deal. In port, the 12 on, 12 off stuff was just when you were at sea, stuff like that. Now you still had to stand watches and stuff. So your rotation for watches might be like, say, once a week. Once a week, you'd be scheduled to be on the ship for that whole day. But that's not so bad still, because even the guys who lived off base, it would be like a regular job until, like, say, Thursday. And then they had watch or they had duty. They would stay on the ship that day and then head out the next day back to their regular sort of family life, you know. Now, that's when I was on the ship. But finally, I got off the ship and got shore duty. So after like 3 years of being on the ship, I was eligible for shore duty. So I had originally enlisted for 6 years. Well, it was like a year and a half or a little more that I was in school for electronics. Then 3 years and 3 months on the carrier. Then I had about a year left in my enlistment when I was ready, that I had enough time at sea that I could transfer to shore duty. Okay, so I start talking to the recruiting people who are doing all the scheduling and stuff. And they were like, oh yeah, okay, you have enough time at sea that you could get transferred to shore duty. Great. That's perfect, because after 3 years and 3 months, I was ready to get to shore duty. But no, they said there's a problem. What's the problem? You know, transfer me off the ship and get me to shore duty. So they said you have to have a year and a half to get transferred to shore duty. That's like the minimum stay at one of the shore duty places. So if you only have like a year left in your enlistment, they said, you're better off just staying on the ship. Right. So I was like, wait a minute. My time at sea is up. So I'm on shore duty, but I've only got a year. So what are the options? Well, they were like, you could just re-enlist for another 4 or 6 years. No, that wasn't my plan, because I would have only been on shore duty for 2 years, and then I would have been right back to another carrier for another 3 years or whatever. No, this isn't working. We're not communicating here, because I only need a year and a half to get to shore duty. And they were like, yep, that's true. And then the guy goes, well, you could just extend for 6 months. That would give you the 18 months you need to get transferred to shore duty. Yeah, let's do that. That's more the idea, because I'm not re-enlisting for another 4 or 6 years. Just extend 6 more months. That gives me a year and a half. Then I can get to shore duty. Yeah. So eventually we got down to that. So that's what I did. So I extended for 6 months. That gives me 18 months left in my enlistment. Then I was able to transfer to shore duty. All right, now we're talking. So the way this works is you write in paper your 3 most desirable shore duty places. Then, judging by the needs of the Navy, they decide where you go. All right. So I was very familiar by that point with that whole area around Norfolk and stuff. And I knew there was an air base. So I put that air base and a couple of other places around that area for my 3 choices. A couple of weeks go by. The guy calls me back and he says, okay, look, you got this Naval Air Station. Great. I'm happy with that. So then I got orders to NAS Oceana, Naval Air Station, not far from Norfolk. And what's really nice about it too is it's only 10 minutes or so to the beach, because I got a place off base. The other piece of that is, if there's base housing, they could just put you up in barracks at the housing, or you can apply for off-base housing. So at that point, I applied for off-base housing, and then I just lived off the base. There, it was like a country club. I mean, they had everything, and when you talk about it's like a regular job, Monday through Friday, stuff like that. And I think I was only standing watch and duty maybe once every 12 days or something, which was really easy. So like 2 days out of the month, you do that thing where I was telling you, you just stay there for 48 hours or 24 hours, the whole day. All right, well, that makes it easy. So I got a place off base, and it really was like a country club. That air station had everything. It was all set up. So you've got the commissary and stuff right on the base. There are restaurants there, even on the base, where you can get food and stuff. Of course, for lunch, you could eat at the mess hall even, which was really nice. That was all catered out, you know. So for 18 months, I was there at the air base. And I lived like 10 minutes from the beach. So that was perfect. That worked out real well. Oh, and I did mention to you before that I was from Pennsylvania. So the drive from these places around Norfolk up to PA is like maybe 5 hours. So a lot of times on the weekends, I would even head back up to PA by Monday, be back down at the base. Piece of cake. Worked out great. Spent a year and a half there, and at that point, then my enlistment was up. Now they always want you to re-enlist, especially if it's a field they need, like electronics techs, especially at that time, were making good money in the civilian world. So that's what I ended up doing. But there was, based on, like I said, your job and stuff like that, they were offering like $10,000 for a re-enlistment bonus. So any of the electronics guys, when their enlistment was up, the Navy would pay them a bonus, re-enlistment bonus. So if they enlisted for another 4 years, they would pay them an extra $10,000. But even back then, for $10,000, the difference in pay, you know, like from the Navy pay scale, the difference between me being in electronics and taking a job in the civilian world, I could make much more money working in the civilian world in electronics than I could in the Navy. So even the $10,000 to me was like, no, I'm heading for a big company who pays more than the Navy, you know. And that's what most of my buddies and that were in electronics, that's what almost all of us did, was take the civilian jobs and stuff. And to me, that meant I wasn't going back to sea again on an aircraft carrier, which worked out fine for me. Well, that beer's shot. Take care of yourself. Have a good day. I'll catch you later.